we do different gigs for different reasons.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you do a gig because it pays really well. Other times you do a gig because it's a really cool venue.
Mm-hmm.
Other times you do a gig because it's your friends playing.
Right.
Other times you're doing it for whatever reason.
Right.
And like you said, you like playing music.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure at some point Walter Simonsen is grumpy. But I've never seen it. You seem to be a fun-loving guy. Is this something that you always had, or you learned it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always had it. I think as I've gotten older, as I've gotten more jaded, if you will, as I've been around more situations, I've realized that this is supposed to be fun. I just can't. I can't go to a gig and just not have fun. And if it's gonna be like that, then I almost don't want to do it. You know, I mean, unless it just pays great. You know, so no, I'll do it, right? But like, I mean, no matter what, I'm gonna have fun what I'm doing. And if everybody else around me doesn't want to have fun and they're gonna just hate it, that's okay too. You know, because that's their choice. But I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna be that guy. You know, if you go watch me play, I'll go play a $40, $50 salsa gig on a Monday night, okay, but I'm still going to dance around. I'm still going to act crazy because that's fun for me, you know. I mean, I've always been laid back, you know, chill, want to have a good time. That's who I've always been. That's how I've always been since I can really remember, you know. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's the easy part. You know, I mean, I think too, it's just a mental mindset of you know, you drive up to the gig and like you said, you know, how do you unwind? How do you get there? Okay, I come down, I unwind, I relax, and then remember that this is supposed to be fun. It should be fun, and if it's not fun, I can make a hell of a lot more money doing something else, right? So if we're gonna do it, and we're gonna go on a gig, man, let's be a good hang. Let's have a lot of fun. Let's be friendly with everybody because you know we've all been that guy who shows up on the gig and it's your first time and you don't know anybody, right? So be nice to the guy. Be nice to the new guy, you know? Have fun with the new guy. Talk to him. Ask him what he's all about because realistically, he wants to just have fun too, right? He just wants to have a good time. So, I mean, that's what I try to do. And I, you know, yeah, I've always kind of been like that. But I also did make a mental decision maybe about 8 years ago that I was going to have a good time no matter what I was doing. And if I said yes to the gig, it was my job to have a good time. That's as much part of playing well. Playing well is as much a part as having a good time and looking like you're having a good time. Because no audience loves it when everybody's having a good time. I've always been really curious to get the real in-depth scientific thing about the gap.
I was really, really fortunate in the experiences I've had through life. I had a strong math background in high school and college, but I never took it as far as getting an engineering degree or something. But I have the concepts down, and then the people I studied from and met with, and the different experiences I've had, and like your father, my father had a PhD. My father's was in biology and chemistry. And he was a forensic pathologist. But so there's scientific background, so I'm always a curious guy.
Yeah.
And when I was working with Bob Reeves, I saw him work with guys, and I would see him fix a problem. And I could just wait to see that kind of problem happen again and try to fix it the same way, but I wanted to know, well, why did that work? And if that fix worked with this guy, how come that same fix didn't work with that guy? Mm-hmm. You know, and so that's where I've gone with it. I like to understand it. If a teacher tells you something that's scientifically incorrect, but it helps you play the trumpet better and make music better,
right,
I'm all for it.
Right.
Because when I go to hear you play, like when I came to hear Trumpetology play about a week ago or so, you know, 3 of the guys were Stomby Bros.
Yep.
The other 2 guys were not.
Yeah.
But I want everyone to sound good.
Right.
Because I want to enjoy the band.
Right.
You know, and so that's where it really comes down to. It's really what you said, that it's about making music.
Right.
I kind of went on a whole tangent.
No, yeah, but here's while you were doing that, I was thinking about that. So I always have a hard time explaining to people that don't play the Stomby gear, right? Or, you know, even guys, right? Because I mean, other manufacturers that have done things with the gap have like a different take on like what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yet every time we talk, it seems to always make sense to me about what you're saying and kind of what it is. So I guess my question is this: because I have this with students too. How do you? What's the best way that you can like layman the gap? Can you do that?
The short version is it's a tuning device.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that, it's not like the tuning slide on a trumpet.
Right.
Tuning slide on a trumpet, when you pull it out further, for the most part, the whole trumpet gets flatter by about the same amount.
Right.
And when you push that tuning slide in, the whole trumpet gets sharper, but about by the same amount. All the notes sharpen about the same amount.
Sure.
The gap doesn't work that way. When you make the gap bigger, it's not just making the horn longer and making everything get flatter. It's making some notes get flat, some notes get sharp, some notes stay in the same place. And it's not always the same notes because you have a different player on the front. The human aspect is such an important part. What I was saying before about, watching Bob work with guys. How come that fix worked for that guy, but the other guy comes in with the same situation and a different fix has to happen? It's because of the human part. So back to the gap. So if we have Mother Nature's harmonic series, just think about the open horn, we want them all to be in tune with themselves. And what the gap is doing is moving these different harmonics series around, and we're trying to get the highest number of notes in tune relative with themselves that we can get with the mouthpiece, the trumpet, and the player we have.
Right.
It might be 90%, it might be 80%, it might be 60%.
Right.
But the gap is the best way and the easiest way to fix that. It's not about airflow, it's about how it's affecting the resonances or the acoustic aspect of the instrument.
Right.
And when those notes get as in tune with themselves as possible, then the feel is the most comfortable it would be. That's why we mistake it for airflow and resistance.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense because I always think about, whenever like old school Reeves guys, whenever they see me with the coupler on, they always go and they'll be like, "Oh, okay, you're playing on you're on a 3.5 on this, Yeah, okay. Is that more resistance or less resistance?" And I'm always like, "Well, I don't know, but it sure as hell works. So whatever it is, it works, And it's interesting because what you're talking about is such like high level physics, right? I mean, if you really think about it, and
well,
like
the guys who I learned from, absolutely.
Right. And like I have a little bit of understanding about physics because my dad's a physicist, right? So, but it's interesting because we're talking about like physics at such a high level and on such like a minuscule level as well, right? I mean, we're talking about millimeters of change, right?
Well, we're talking to be significant, it really doesn't have to be anything more than a 32nd of an inch. That'd be a half size from the Reeves system, which I feel is the standard, so that's why I stayed with that, even though we made other changes to the coupler system. So a 32nd of an inch. Less than that, the pitch change is below what humans can hear. Also, I mean, it's a big, complicated subject, but you can, with a solid shank mouthpiece, you can vary the gap by a quarter size just by how hard you crank it into the horn.
Yeah, wow.
So at some point you have to say perfection's the enemy of good enough.
Sure. Sure.
And your chops are different puffiness from one day to the next, which is changing how far they're going in the cup.
Right.
Which is changing the acoustic equation, the resonance of that cup, which can have easily a quarter, sometimes even a half.
Right.
Coupler size change.
Yeah, that makes sense. So since we're talking about like small changes, that like I think for me and for like Bijan and Javier and and everybody else that's like a professional, right? Like matters a lot, Do you need to reach a certain point? Do you need to be at a certain playing level where the gap actually makes a difference?
Well, I think the short answer is yes, but I think that level that you need to be is a lot lower than people would think.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that not just the gap, but good equipment.
Right.
I mean, my father, as I said, was a learned man, and he believed that whatever you were trying to learn, whether it was riding a bike or playing the trumpet or, how to build something out of wood,
Sure.
the better tools you had, the better shot you had at learning how to do it right.
Right.
You're not fighting the tools. You're not fighting the equipment, right? And so he would always, to be honest, not pay the bills sometimes,
Right.
but make sure that, my sister who was getting into sewing had a good sewing machine
Sure.
that was at the time,
Sure.
Or, in my case, he got me the best trumpet he could get me. It was a used Bach at the time, because having the right tools. So does a first or second year trumpet student need a Stomby instrument? No, probably not. But if they had one of the student models, would they be better off than battling
Sure.
one from another country that isn't made very well?
Right.
Well, probably. The trumpet's a difficult instrument as it is. If
Right.
you're fighting the instrument, you're just making it harder.
But if the sound is easier to get out by owning, better gear, then that just means it's less time for the student, less time for the teacher, and you can get into really making music.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
you're singing my song.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that I like being in this wacky business that I'm in is that if I'm fortunate enough to develop or be part of the development of an instrument or a mouthpiece that's easier to play or sounds better, I'm like the first one who gets to use it.
Right. Yeah.
And it's fun to work with players. We worked on some different mouthpieces.
Yeah.
And as your playing has changed and demands on you have changed, we've modified this or that.
That's right.
And it's fun. It's not. Well, it's fun when it's successful. There are, but
It's always successful in the end,
yes, in the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how I look at it. I think that whether you're a race car driver or a trumpet player or a machinist, you should always try to get absolutely the best equipment you can get.
Absolutely. I'm a believer in it, that's for sure.